Hello, all. We're going to take a look today at the thought of our founding fathers. When we really delve into the thoughts of our founding fathers, we can see that they clearly saw Americans as a distinct and new nation. I want to take a look today specifically at Thomas Paine's Common Sense as well as the Declaration of Independence itself, and compare and contrast how the two documents see us as Americans as a new and separate nation. Now, while there are many, I'm going to take three main points out of both common sense and the Declaration of Independence. Let's start first with common sense. Um, First, in common sense, Thomas Paine claims that America has outgrown Britain as a reason for us being our own nation. Uh, he compares how a child outgrows milk for meat to how Americans have outgrown a need for a colonial overlord. In other words, Americans can stand on their own, much like a child grows and no longer needs a parent over him. Second, Paine claims that Britain cares little for America. England is distant and ignorant of American affairs and American needs and wants. During war, they don't fight for Americans, but only protect their own interests. Whenever war does break out, it ruins America's trade and economy. Um, Now, the point I think Paine is trying to make here is that if Americans and British were of the same nation, their interests would be aligned, which, according to Paine, is far from the case. Um, Third, Paine rejects the idea that England is even America's parent country. Instead, he claims that Europe is actually America's parent country because it's been peopled by seekers of liberty from across the entire European continent. Paine does have a point here. One need to only look at the religious and national diversity of the colonies. Some even suggest that the Declaration of Independence was influenced by the Dutch Declaration of Independence against the Spanish in 1581. So that means even ideas were coming from the continent as well. Now, moving to the Declaration of Independence itself, let's take a look at how it compares to Paine's claims. So, whereas Paine's claims of America as a new nation looked heavily at the state of America, i.e., America outgrowing Britain or America being European as opposed to English, Jefferson really puts much of the ball in Britain's court as for why America has to leave Britain. First, he established that the laws of nature, as put forth by God, grant that a people can separate from each other. America is not obligated to remain with Britain based off of the laws of nature. Second, he really pulls no punches in labeling King George and the British government as tyrants, of which the American people have the right to separate from. Um, as opposed to Paine, in this point, Americans aren't separating from Britain because they are different from the British, i.e., European, or outgrowing the British, but are separating because of British tyranny. Now, whereas Paine in this case drew from ethnic ideas and developmental ideas, Jefferson drew from reformed ideas, such as those of Theodore Beza, which had been filtered through Enlightenment thinking. So the issue of tyranny also leads us to the third point. Jefferson acknowledges that the brotherhood that once existed between America and Britain exists, but he claims that this brotherhood was broken when Britain refused to cooperate with America and instead sought to oppress her. Because of that, and in keeping with the first 2 points, America must break from Britain to be her own nation. So, while both documents had the same goal in mind, their justifications for separating varied. Most likely, this is because the audiences for the documents varied. Common Sense was written to convince the colonists to revolt against Britain and set up their own nation. For this reason, it was longer and had to draw on multiple reasons for leaving British rule because it had a lot of people it had to convince. Um, the Declaration was written for the colonists, yes, but also for the government of Britain. It wasn't as interested in convincing as much as explaining why America was leaving British rule to establish its own country. Nevertheless, both documents accomplished their intent, and we as Americans are grateful